late 2009, a small group of people on an internet forum started asking a question that nobody official seemed to be asking. Where was Abraham Shakespeare? He wasn't famous, wasn't in trouble with the law, just a truck driver from Lakeland, Florida, who a few years earlier had won the lottery. $30 million. And then quietly stopped being seen. No accident, no argument, no goodbye. His family assumed he'd gone off on his own, maybe tired of people asking him for money. Maybe he just wanted to disappear for a while and enjoy what he had won. A handful of strangers online weren't so sure, so they started digging, the way people do when a story doesn't quite sit right. A few days in, someone new showed up in the thread. They were oddly calm and certain, insisting that Abraham was fine, and that people should stop making something out of nothing. Nobody thought much of it at first. But the account didn't leave. It kept replying, kept defending, kept showing up exactly when the conversation got close to something. Nobody in that thread knew who they were talking to. It would take months to find out. His name was Abraham Shakespeare, a laborer and truck driver from Lakeland, Florida. In 2006, he bought a lottery ticket at a gas station. He won $30 million. He took the lump sum, about $17 million after tax, bought a house in a gated community, gave money to family, and gave money to people who asked. In April 2009, Abraham Shakespeare stopped being seen in public. No missing persons report, no investigation, just absence. For months, that was enough to explain away. People still received texts from his phone. Nothing final, nothing alarming, just enough contact to keep questions at bay. In November 2009, 7 months later, his family reported him missing. The theory that circulated was that he had taken his money and left. Somewhere warm, somewhere private, but not everyone accepted that. While Abram's family waited, a community of amateur investigators on a site called Web Sleuths had already begun digging. Web Sleuths wasn't like a subreddit or a comment section. It was a website solely dedicated to solving crimes. People cross-referencing records, timelines, financial documents, treating a missing persons case like a puzzle. They traced who had been close to Abram, who had access to his money, who benefited from his absence. An account from the thread stayed active the entire time, still posting, still insisting he was fine, still arguing with strangers who had nothing but time and a shared thread to compare notes in. A forum moderator checked the technical data behind the posts, the IP address behind the account, the one insisting Abram was alive, matched the IP address of an email sent around the same time. Both traced to the same location. The missing man's home address. In 2009, Abram's mother received a phone call.
Hello?
A voice claiming to be her son. She knew immediately it wasn't him. Police traced the call to a payphone in a parking lot. The trail led to a man named Greg Smith. Under questioning, Smith admitted he'd been paid to make the call, to impersonate Abraham on the phone. He agreed to work with the police, wore a wire, and waited. On January 25th, 2010, the person who paid him led an undercover officer to a property in Plant City, Florida, pointed to a slab of concrete in the backyard, and said that's where Abraham Shakespeare's body was buried. Handed over a .38 revolver, called it the murder weapon. 2 days later, investigators recovered human remains beneath the slab. The clothing matched what Abraham had been wearing in a video recorded that April, the same month that he'd vanished from public life. investigators concluded he had likely been killed that same day. The person was arrested. The person who had led police to the grave. The person behind the payphone call. The forum account. The IP address that tracked back to her house. Her name was Doris Moore, but her friends called her Dee Dee. She had met Abraham in April 2009, the same month that he had vanished, introducing herself as a writer researching a book on lottery winners. Within months, she had formed a business with him and taken control of his funds. $1 million withdrawn, a Hummer, a Corvette, a truck, a vacation. When questioned, her answer was always the same thing.
It was a gift.
She was the account in the forum thread, posting from inside Abraham's house for months whilst his body was buried in the yard behind her. She had paid Greg Smith to fake the phone call to Abraham's mother. She had led the undercover officer to the concrete slab. A detective who worked on the case later credited the web sleuths community directly, stating their research had tangible impact on the investigation. A group of strangers with no badge and no official standing had traced a missing rich man's story back to the person responsible. Before some of the official case had caught up, the person they'd been building a case against, without knowing it, had been in the thread with them the entire time. On the 10th of December 2012, a jury found Doris Moore guilty of first-degree murder. The judge handed down a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. He added a separate mandatory minimum of 25 years for the use of a firearm in the commission of the felony. A sentence that, under Florida law, would run on top of the life term regardless. Before sentencing, the judge addressed the courtroom directly. He called Doris the most manipulative person he had ever encountered in his career on the bench. Cold, calculating, and cruel. Maurice showed no visible reaction as the verdict was read. She has filed multiple appeals since her conviction, the most recent in 2023, requesting a new trial. None have succeeded. She remains incarcerated at a correctional facility, still serving that sentence today.
But in a handwritten letter to the court recently, Dee Dee Moore apologizes, quote, "I'm truly sorry to the prosecutor, Abraham's mom, and the others I have hurt for not being truthful. I regret my actions." But in the next breath, Dee Dee Moore denies being the killer and instead points the finger at key witness Greg Smith.
You're gonna look at the source. The source is now an admitted liar who's serving a life sentence in Florida State Prison. The letter could in fact hurt her now because she's admitted to perjury.
Dee Dee wasn't caught by a camera, wasn't caught by a witness coming forward. She was caught, in part, by a forum thread that she never stopped replying to. But until next time, keep fearing the living.